Welcome, friends. We start in 20 seconds. Today's resolution is the Quran is a scientific miracle. Nadir Ahmed is taking the affirmative position while Reverend Samuel Green joins us to take the negative position. Nadir asked to go first, so we'll let him take it away with his 20-minute opening statement. You can unmute and I'll put your slides up.
All right, thank you. Thank you for participating in this debate, Sam. So let me start off by saying that at no time in this debate will Samuel produce facts. That's because the religion of Christianity is not a fact-based religion. It is an interpretation-based religion. Islam is a fact-based religion. And I'm saying that not to put down Christians or something like that. I'm saying that so that you hold me to that standard. That when you hear me talking tonight, presenting evidence, is this guy just reinterpreting, misinterpreting to make his belief true? Or is he really presenting facts? And in fact, if I will even argue, if Sam can even produce one single fact which supports his case tonight, he gets a $20 gift certificate from McDonald's from me. All right. But I know that's not going to happen because Christianity has no facts to support it. And, hear me now, believe me later. You will see at the end of the debate that this is the case. So I want to start off by talking about give you a definition of evil, and I'll explain to you how this plays into the scientific miracle of the Quran. So the definition of evil, one of the definitions I'd like to share with you is a belief causing tragedy, suffering, and misery, which is both needless and preventable in a population of people which embrace this belief. Okay. Now, there are many scientific errors in the Bible which causes this type of evil, and the scientific miracle you are going to witness tonight is that the Quran and Islam actually corrects these scientific mistakes, and it alleviates and removes the evil. What is evil? Needless tragedy, suffering, and misery caused by these teachings. It will remove it. That's a scientific miracle. And it's not just my opinion. Now, today, the agnostics, the atheists have examined the same evidence which I'm about to present to you, and they have given a partial endorsement. They say, yeah, that actually is true. The Prophet of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam did correct these scientific errors inside the Bible. Here is my video where you will see the partial atheist endorsement over here, meaning in the sense like they're not going to say it's absolutely miraculous. They're saying probably Muhammad studied these things. They came up with these theories, but watch my video, which you see on the screen. And so my point is this: everybody can see that that it's clear evidence except the Christians. So I hope to bring them on board tonight. So let's talk about this. This is very interesting. The first scientific catastrophe of the Bible, and you'll see how Islam corrects this: the biblical virginity test. And inside the following passage, we are inside Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 17 and 18. I'm going to go through this very quickly. I'll just ask that you please hit pause on your YouTube video to get all my references, because I got a lot to share here. It's a verse in the Bible which has a virginity test, as said, and they spread the garment before the elders so that the elders of the city can basically decide, is this woman a virgin or not? In verse 20, it says, if no proof of a young man's virginity, of the young woman's virginity, can be found. So here's the problem. There's no such thing. There is no such thing, according to science, that you can prove a virginity, whether it's blood on the bed sheet, nonsense, or whatever. Why? Because science tells us today that women break their hymen by horseback riding, or some women are not even born with a hymen. And what about women who have been sexually molested? They're not going to bleed on no bed sheet. So this has caused catastrophic suffering and misery in people. Here's an article right here, The Historic Traditions of the Virginity Test. Listen to what it says. It says, on the hand of offering advice to the young couples to take receipt of the blood-stained wedding sheet. That's just coming straight out of the Bible. That's just what we just read, which will later be shown to the dinner guests at the ceremony feast. The punishment for failing a virginity test varies depending on culture, At the extreme end, there's corporal punishment, even death may result. Jews, Christians, and unfortunately Muslims have also fall under this terrible curse. But we know now from science that the virginity test is bogus. It is unscientific. Listen to what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said. Well, first of all, there's no virginity test in Islam. But listen to what he said. The most wicked among people in the eyes of Allah on the day of judgment is a man who goes to his wife and she comes to him and then he divulges her secret. What's that secret? Well, what's taking place on that bed sheet, whatever, which is nonsense, of course. I didn't share a lot of references with you about how you know about how the virginity test is bogus, because this is stuff you could just Google. All right, just Google it and you'll see that this is not an accurate way. There is no way to determine virginity. It's an act of stupidity. So this, from a scientific point of view, and this act of stupidity is found inside Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 17. Okay. And so here we see a clear-cut case of how Islam removes this terrible curse put upon women. Let's take a look at another example. The Bible stigmatizes epileptics as demon possessed. And let's see what Islam teaches on that. They both teach about epilepsy. This is very, very interesting. So basically, the problem here, as you all know, we've had a problem where there's a confusion between the flu and COVID. Why? Because they share the same symptoms, both the flu and COVID. Well, the problem is the Bible causes the same kind of confusion in which they claim that epileptics and demon possessed people share the same symptoms. And so as a result, people who are epileptics, they are stigmatized because they look exactly like alleged demon possessed people. So how are you able to tell the difference between the two? That's just it. You can't do it. So I'm going to give you a verse in the book in Mark where it starts listing the symptoms of alleged demon possession. And guess what? They're the exact same symptoms of epilepsy. So now people are getting confused between the two. Is this guy demon possessed, or is he really has epilepsy, which has led to their needless suffering and persecution? But that's just not my words. That's the words of scholars and from the medical community as well. Let me share with you. Let me share my screen. I'm sorry. Share my screen so I could get you those references, and I'll get you that Bible verse as well, so we can look and see what the scientists say about this as well. So let's take a look. The verse which I'm quoting from is found in Mark chapter 9. And Mark 9 states over here, if I can find it, yeah, here we go. I don't know if you can see that. Mark 9:18, and when the seizure seizes him, it throws him on the ground. He foams at the mouth, gnashes his teeth, and he becomes rigid. Those are the symptoms of epilepsy. So now let's see what the scientists have to say about this. I'm quoting from two neuroscientists, Dr. Carl Oten-Nakin and Mia Tuft inside. These are specialists in neuropsychology. Listen to what they say. Christianization reinforced the belief in healing by rituals. What? It was Christianization. What specifically? The New Testament described how Jesus healed a boy suffering from lunacy, epilepsy, and then Jesus rebukes the devil. So this is what's causing the stigmatization. Let's take a look at the International League Against Epilepsy. Let's see what the scholars says about that. So I'm producing documented scientific references to back up what I'm saying. A passage in St. Mark's Gospel, what we just read, Mark 19:18, which accurately describes tonic-clonic seizures, but concludes that the child contained a spirit of dumbness in the Christian world. This biblical story led to the belief shared by many Greeks and Latin priests that epileptics were demoniacs. So what does the research state over here? That is this passage, Mark 9:18, which is stigmatizing these people who are epileptic. And so thus the New Testament unleashed this terrible curse upon them. Now let's look at another. I'm going to give you a third reference on this. This is from epilepsy.com. Listen to what they say and how these epileptics suffer from the curse of the New Testament. It says, has anybody had a problem with a religious family member whipping out Mark 9, the passage we just read? A chapter where Jesus heals a boy and apparently having a seizure of some sort, then declaring that you must have demons in you or have some kind of spiritual unrest, or they're just not right with God. My father did that to me recently. You can't blame the father because the Bible does confuse the two. Okay, those symptoms in Mark 9:18, those are the symptoms of epilepsy. Now let's go to the Prophet Muhammad and let's see what it says over here. Where is it? I can't find my IDs. Okay, here we go. A demon, I'm sorry, a person suffering from seizure came to the Prophet of Islam, and the Prophet Muhammad, did he say, oh, this guy's got possessed by some demon? No. He said, I will pray for you. And that's why when you look at the scientific references, the name Muhammad doesn't appear. The name Jesus does, unfortunately. So here we see that once again, a second correction here. And let me get there. Here's the hadith which I was just quoting. I will cure him. I will pray to God to cure him. But notice what he didn't say. He didn't accuse the boy of being demon possessed. So this is how Islam is correcting the scientific catastrophes of the Bible. Let's take another look at, let's look at now, this is very interesting. Both the Bible and the Quran talk about alcohol. Let's see who does a better job. So according to Islam, alcohol is completely banned. Now, science, I'm quoting from the following website, I'm sorry, the following scientific study. A casual fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, a review and casual diagram. This is found in the European Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in 2019. It has concluded that because of the Islamic faith, Muslim women are 50 times less likely to give birth to a fetal alcohol child. In contrast, it states wine is part of the communion in Catholic faith and abstinence is much less common. So I know it says Catholics, but what the research paper is telling you here, don't waste your time with Muslim women. You're not going to find this fetal alcohol syndrome. So what fetal alcohol syndrome is, it's basically where the mother drinks a moderate amount of alcohol, and thus it affects the infant, in which it causes some type of brain disorder, or some kind of problems with a baby, and they have to live with that problems for the rest of their lives. Muslim women are 50 times less likely to give birth to a FAS child, fetal alcohol syndrome child. So here we see that once again, Islam is removing all the problems which alcohol cause. Now, some Christians say, oh, but alcohol is good in moderate amount. In a moderate amount, you can have it like a glass of wine. It's true, it's good for your heart. But science tells us that the evil of alcohol outweighs any good. Let me get you that scientific reference in case you want to do that moderate alcohol nonsense tonight. It states in the following article: drinking any amount of alcohol causes damage to the brain. It states over here in the CNN article, there is no such thing as a safe level of drinking. And it states over here very clearly, if I can find it, that where's my study over here? Oh, okay, here we go. The following article, yeah. It states, if you could look at your screen, many studies have shown that the overall health risk of drinking alcohol outweighs any benefits. Now look what the Quran says inside chapter 2, verse 219. They have some benefit for the people, referring to alcohol, but their harm is far greater than any benefit, than the word for word agreement with modern science. So we have two statements in the Quran on alcohol which agrees with modern science here. Now some may say, oh, well, other societies have banned alcohol in the past. So what's the big deal here? What's the big deal here is no society in the past has got two scientifically correct statements on alcohol. And so the issue here, now we see a third example of how the Quran is removing the needless misery and suffering caused by the teachings of the Bible. Now, I know there's some Christians who say, but I don't drink alcohol. I believe that uh, the Bible condemns it. So what? The issue here is that the Bible wasn't clear. It did a lousy, pathetic job of condemning alcohol, if that's really what the position of the Bible is. It did a horrible job as compared to the Quran. So even if you were to go that route, you still can't compare to Islam, right? Again, Muslim women are 50 times less likely to give birth to a fetal alcohol child. Science has not given any honors like that to the Bible. Okay, so the question I have for Sam, if you don't believe Prophet Muhammad, then how do you explain an alleged false prophet saving millions of children from fetal alcohol syndrome while the true Lord and Savior let them perish? How do you explain that? That makes no sense. There's only one sensible explanation for that, and that is there's something wrong with your book. And Muhammad is the true prophet. He's correcting that. So let's look at another example. Let's look at meat consumption. Both Jesus and Muhammad talked about meat consumption. Basically, to put it in a long story short, from the following article, got questions. The Bible removes all restrictions on meat consumption. But that's a big mistake because you don't really want to eat monkeys, because just one example of bushmeat, which you don't want to eat, is a monkey. Why? Because that's where you get Ebola from. That's where you get AIDS from. In fact, from the CDC.org, Center for Disease Control, they state very clearly, stay away from monkeys and bats, because that is how we got Ebola and AIDS and these other zoonotic diseases. Look at the astonishing teachings of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Here he reimposes those restrictions onto people, in which he states, if I could find it, very clearly, do not eat animals with fangs, for Allah's messenger forbade the eating of meat of beasts having fangs. So here we see, what's number 4? 4 examples of how Islam is correcting the scientific errors of the Bible and has produced scientifically superior teachings on all these issues here. So now, to sum things up, the definition of evil, as I stated very clearly, is a belief causing tragedy, suffering, and misery, which is both needless and preventable in a population of people. There's no doubt that Christianity promotes evil, and but you can't see it at the individual level as clear as you can see it at the bird's eye view. When you look at that population, you can see what the horrors of what's going on, from epileptics being stigmatized, from children born with fetal alcohol syndrome, from women who have been sexually molested, let's just say, being subjected to a virginity test. All of this is promoted by the Bible, and the Quran and Islam removes all of this. Now, some may say, what about Islam? Does Islam have any kind of scientific errors like the Bible does? Absolutely not. And I have been debating this. In fact, I will challenge Samuel to a debate on this. Now, debating both topics all in one debate is a little bit difficult, but definitely we could do a debate afterwards and we can talk about that and I can prove to you. But even it's kind of irrelevant. And here's a reason why. Let's say you find a mistake or something like what we found in the Bible and the Quran. Does it invalidate anything which I'm saying? No. Something can still correct your scientific errors and not be perfect. Whether the Quran is perfect or not is irrelevant for my arguments. But like I said, definitely I want to debate that with you, because you will see that the Quran and Islam is in perfect harmony with modern science. So that's a red herring. That's off topic. That really doesn't deal with what I am presenting to you in terms of evidence proving that Prophet Muhammad is a true prophet. So I want to also go back to the point here. People have already examined these arguments. Look, atheists and agnostics have already looked this over and they agree. In fact, I just want, if you click on on the descriptions, let's click on the Google document. I just want to share some of their comments. They do agree. Listen to what I said over here. These are atheist apologists. I asked them, I said, basically, do you agree that Islam corrects the 6 scientific errors of the Bible? Mark also pointed out that it doesn't prove it to be miraculous, but he did agree. This guy, he's called a Kentucky atheist, Joe Roberts. He says, I agree with what Mark said in that clip. Go through this document. Look at all the people who look at my evidence I'm presenting to you and are signing off. They're saying, yes, that is true. We can see how one book is correcting the other book. So this is just not a Muslim argument. Praise God, now we have the atheists and agnostics who are now agreeing. Now we just got to get the Christians to remove the fetters from their eyes and just accept the truth. Don't waste our time tonight. Oh, but the Quran is scientifically inaccurate. We can debate that at any time, and you will see that in complete harmony with modern science. So I guess I will turn it over to Samuel, and let's see if he's able to refute the evidences I'm presenting to him.
All right. Thank you, Nadir. As Samuel sets up his screen for us, I just want to remind our audience that I'm Womb to Tomb Apologetics, and I'm proud to be the moderator of tonight's debate. Check out my channel if you like discussion of topics like Christianity, Islam, abortion apologetics, politics, and more. Next up, we have Reverend Samuel Green's 20-minute opening statement, followed by 5-minute replies, a 15-minute open discussion. Then we'll have audience Q&A and 4-minute closings. Submit your questions in the chat and subscribe. So I'll pull up this, and you can begin when you're ready.
Now, hang on. All right. Well, thank you for that, Nadir. Let me just set my microphone up here. So the way that I'm going to approach this question is to look at what I see Muslims saying on the internet, on Instagram, in books. And so I've given you a couple of examples here of the different types of books that you will see where they are saying that the Quran has scientific information that was unknown at the time of Muhammad. And so this is the debate. This is the debate on how it comes to us as Christians. Nadir's got his own take on things, and I'll look at that later on. But I'm going to look at the classical way in which this is being discussed. And so I'm going to look at, is the Quran a scientific miracle? I'm going to look at the examples that Muslims give, and then I'll look at the references that are attributed to scientists. So let's get straight into it. This is one that you'll find on the internet, that the sex of honeybees and their activities is accurate in the Quran. So, and thy Lord revealed unto the bees, and the bees there is feminine in the Arabic, saying, take unto yourselves of the mountains, houses, and of the trees, and of what they are building. Then eat of all manner of fruit, and follow the ways of your Lord, easy to go upon. Then comes there forth out of their bellies a drink of diverse hues and healing for men. And so here's this idea, this description of how bees are builders and bees produce honey. And the claim is that the Arabic word is female, and that modern science has showed us that it is the female bees who do these things. And so this is one of the ones. So what was it? Yahya Harun, who put up this argument. Now, the thing with that is, and at this point, the Quran's actually not wrong, so I'm not being critical of the Quran here, but languages just don't work that way with feminine and masculine and neuter in other languages. So, for instance, at the start of this section, and surely in the cattle, and the cattle there is masculine, there is a lesson for you. We give you drink of what is in their bellies. And so it talks about it talks about milk coming from cattle. And so here we have cattle in the masculine who give milk. Now, again, I'm not saying the Quran's wrong here. I'm just saying that languages attribute gender to different animals for different reasons. The Romans are in the feminine. There's just conventions that develop over time. This is not an error in the Quran. It's just how languages function, but it's just ignorant claims that some Muslims make about science in the Quran. There's nothing scientific about the Quran's descriptions of bees or animals. It's just saying what's observable. However, in other areas, it does make mistakes. So in fetal development, now what I want to say with fetal development is that it's always been observable. It's always been observable through miscarriages, abortions, autopsies, and the eating of animals. So we said, "O apostle, we slaughter a she-camel, a cow, and a sheep, and we find an embryo in its womb. Shall we throw it away or eat it?" He replied, "Eat it if you wish." And so here we see that in the butchering of animals, they're cutting up the insides of the animals and they're finding the embryos and the baby animals inside. And so they get to see how animals develop. And as I said, through miscarriages, abortions, and autopsies, you can see these things. There's nothing miraculous in the Quran. In fact, the Quran's description is actually wrong. The Quran is wrong in its description of fetal development. Then we created of a drop of sperm a clot. Then we created the clot a tissue. Then we created of the tissue bones. Then we garmented the bones in flesh. Now, that is simply wrong. We're going to see where it actually comes from, but it's a wrong description because the bones are not made and then clothed with flesh. It all happens within it. Now, this sort of four-stage description that we have here is actually the standard medical understanding from that time, from a man named Galen, and it's just being reflected in the Quran. But let us take the account back again to the first confirmation of that of animals. And in order to make our account orderly and clear, let us divide the creation of the fetus overall into 4 periods of time. The first is that of which, as is seen both in abortions and dissection. So here we see the 4 stages. And where's he learning it from? This Roman or Greek doctor is just learning it from observation, from abortions and dissection. So there's, the Quran is reflecting the common understanding of Galen at the time, and Galen has his limited understanding, and the Quran just reflects the science of the time, which, as we now know, is wrong. Another example is the 2 seas. You may have seen these videos that Muslims put out about 2 seas that come together, but they don't overlap and they don't mix. And so they will quote a verse like this: "He has loosed the 2 seas, they meet. There is a barrier between them. They encroach not one upon another." And so the claim here is that there are these seas and oceans around the world, and Muhammad didn't know about these, and you'll see photos of these 2 seas coming together. Now, of course, they do mix. It's just that they're coming together at such a rate you can't see the overall mixing, but there is mixing happening. But they claim that this is, again, scientific knowledge. Now, the problem with that is if you read the rest of the Quran, it says that the 2 seas are fresh and salt water. So again, this is not an error in the Quran. This is just Muslims imposing upon the Quran ideas which are not there. It is he who has released the 2 seas. This is this one sweet and palatable and salty and bitter, and put between them a barrier and a forbidden ban. And the 2 seas are not alike. This fresh, sweet, good to drink, this bitter and salty. So the 2 seas are fresh water and salt water. And it's saying that there's 2 different lots of water in this world, and they just don't get mixed together. And so you can always find them. Now, again, that's scientifically wrong. I just said before, it's not wrong. It's not wrong in its overall description, but it is wrong in terms of how they're kept separate. They're kept separate through evaporation. Evaporation takes up salt, the water out of salty water. It rains down fresh water, and that's what we drink. So they do get mixed together. The reason they get the reason they're separated is the process of evaporation, which we do not find, as far as I know, taught in the Quran. It has some other idea that the waters are just kept separate, but it's actually evaporation. They do mix. They just get separated through the process of evaporation. The next one is that mountains stabilize the earth. Have we not made the earth a cradle and the mountains as pegs? He has cast on the earth firm mountains so that it does not sway with you. So here is his teaching that the Quran, in the Quran, that the mountains are like pegs and they keep the earth stabilized. Now, this, of course, is false. Mountains result for a couple of reasons, but the main one is when tectonic plates push against each other. So this is what's happening in the Himalayan mountains. Two plates on the earth touch, and then one goes up and then the other goes down. So they're not pegs. They're not there to stabilize things. They're very often areas of more activity where the tectonic plates move over each other. So they're not stopping the earth from swaying. They're actually points where it does sway. So that's just a geographical, not a geological error in the Quran. Aerodynamics. Have they not seen the birds above them spreading out their wings and closing them? Nothing holds them up, save the beneficent. So here's the Quran talking about birds flying. And when you look at them, you know, in one sense, you might say, well, nothing's holding them up. But of course, something is holding them up, and it's air pressure. When you blow your breath, you can feel that breath, and that's pressure. And birds are able to use that air pressure to keep themselves up, to keep themselves suspended in the air. Just in the way that a fish can glide through water, birds have the ability through a lighter medium to glide through air. And of course, we've mastered that with our aeroplanes, where we use air pressure to keep planes in the sky. But what does the Quran say? It says nothing holds them up. Now, that's just false. That's just false. Air holds them up. Air is a substance. Air has pressure. Air has mass. And birds are able, by the grace of God and the creation of God, to utilize the substance of air. If you put a bird in a vacuum, it would not be able to fly. That would be nothing. And then you would see that nothing's holding them up. So the Quran is just wrong when it talks about the flights of birds. It's a scientific error, and that's because Muhammad just doesn't understand air pressure. Now, another one that comes up is days and months, and they will say that the Quran has amazing numbers when it comes to the appearance of the word day. Now, the word day occurs in a couple of different ways in the Quran. The word yom is 325 times, the word nahara 56 times. And so it's not there 365 times. I see these YouTubers and Instagram saying the word for day in the Quran is 365 times. Well, it's not, right? It's not. And then they'll say with months, okay, with months, you can get 12 months. Well, what happens is you end up mixing and matching. And so you say, I'll take the word day, but I'll only take it, in the singular or in the plural or in the nominative or in the genitive, or, and so you mix and match until you get a final number that you're after. And then you say, this is a scientific miracle. This is a scientific miracle. So again, that's not a scientific miracle. The numbers don't even match up. And then if you want to make them match up, you've got to go and pick and choose what you're going to do. One thing that often happens is that we'll have Muslims say to us, look at these scientists. These scientists say these remarkable things about the Quran. And I'm sure you've seen these types of quotes. Well, this was exposed as a fraud in 2002 by the Wall Street Journal, And so I'll read this out to you here. In many Islamic books, there are quotes from scientists in support of the miraculous teaching of the Quran. But in 2002, this was exposed as a sham. Reporters from the Wall Street Journal interviewed these scientists and found out that the scientists were given first-class travel and accommodation for them and their wives to an Islamic conference, where they were pressed to concede that the Quran was miraculous. Professor Hay from the German Marine Institute said, I fell into that trap and then warned other people to watch out for it. And I've given you the reference there. So when you see these quotes being given about these scientists who are saying all these things, when you've been given these quotes, you want to do a bit of digging, because when journalists, investigative journalists have actually looked into it, they found that these scientists don't actually want to talk about that experience anymore and, explain what happened to them. And so anyway, I've given you the reference there and you can look that up. So Nadir said that I would not give any facts. Well, I've given plenty of facts here tonight. I've given plenty of facts. I've been looking at the verses of the Quran and then comparing them to what Muslims say about the Quran. And there are plenty of Muslims who are out there saying that the Quran has scientific knowledge that was just unknown at the time. Now, that is just not true. The claims about the bees is just not true. The claims about fetal development is just not true. What we see about mountains, what we see about, actually, I'll just leave this if you can take my slides away. What we see about the mountains, what we see about the birds, what we see about whatever else I've looked at today, it's just not true. The Quran reflects the science of the time. Muhammad is just saying what he thought, and on many occasions he's wrong. The Quran doesn't even present itself as really wanting to give a scientific explanation to things. But as I've shown, when it does make statements, on these occasions, it's wrong. So I'll just finish up there. I don't have much more to say. I'll finish there.
Thank you, Samuel. Now we'll be moving into the 5-minute rebuttal period. So we'll hand it off to Nadir, and I'll just remind everyone to subscribe if you're enjoying what you're seeing. All right, Nadir, you can just unmute yourself and take it away.
Sure. Yeah, this is not the topic. Scientific errors in Islam. I've already refuted all this. The problem is Samuel is panicking. He was not able to refute the evidences I presented to him that the New Testament causes needless suffering in, as I showed in the population, which Islam removes. He didn't. You were up there for 20 minutes, Sam. You did not even touch a single argument of mine. I already told you, of course, I will refute these claims. This is very easy to refute. But even if what you are saying is true, Samuel, let's just agree with what you're saying, okay? That doesn't prove what I'm saying is wrong. Something can lack perfection, have errors in it, and still correct the scientific errors of the Bible. It could still remove the suffering and misery caused by the New Testament errors. So this is, as I said, very easy to refute. Let's go very quickly through each one. He said, I did produce facts. You see, the Quran is wrong inside chapter number 23 when it said, Allah said, we covered the bones with flesh. That's wrong. Did he provide any reference for you? Any scientific reference? Nothing. Because Christianity is not a fact-based religion. It's wacky, quacky, interpretation-based religion. Then what do you have to say? Now look at this. Very important how I respond to Samuel. Do I say, it's all metaphorical. It's allegorical. Okay, he's just talking to the people of that time. All that nonsense that the false religions tell you, how they try to defend the scientific errors in their book, no, I won't do that. I'll go straight to scientific references showing word for word agreement with the Holy Quran, just like I did earlier. It states very clearly here from the following scientific reference from LiveMap, states over here, that the limb muscles develop in situ with the mesenchyme around the developing bone. But if that's not clear for you, listen to the following reference, which I have over here. This is from Zachary M. Murphy. Listen to what he says. Now remember, what did the Quran say? The Quran said that it covered the bones with flesh. Flesh, muscle, same thing. Listen to what he says. He's teaching on this subject. He says, remember we talked about how we made the skull and all the bones and cartilage and all that stuff? What are we covering all that with? Muscle, the muscle. Hey, that's word for word agreement with the Holy Quran when it says, and we covered the bones with flesh. So Samuel's argument has backfired upon him. He has shown the scientific accuracy, and it goes back to show you Christianity doesn't offer facts to people. And notice how I'm defending this. I'm literally producing facts to people. And then he says, oh, you see, mountains don't have pegs. Yes, they do. All you got to do is just type in Google images, mountain pegs. You'll see that mountains have a deep root into the earth right here. So that argument has been refuted. Then he said that the mountains it holds a stability. The Quran doesn't say that. That's another one of your wacky quacky interpretations. And then he said, you see, Allah is the one who holds up the birds. Yes, Allah is the one who holds up the birds. Now read chapter 16, verse 78. And Allah brought you out of the wombs. But wait a second, this is the OBGYN who does that. So let's use some common sense in reading the Quran. When the Quran states that Allah does something, that does not negate the natural way things are done. And Allah brought you out of the wombs. Let's see what else Allah is doing. And it is Allah who sends the winds. What? Allah sends the winds? Allah takes you out of the wombs? And then it also says Allah sent the prophets. Allah sent the prophet. Jesus, peace be upon him, was born of Mary. The Quran says that. So I hope that's very clear. It's another one of his silly interpretations, which goes right back that I don't owe him any McDonald's hamburgers. $20 gift certificate if you could show me some facts to support what you're saying. I love the topic of alleged scientific errors in the Quran, but as you can see, there are none. And so I think that's it. I nearly nailed every one of your silly arguments against the Quran. But let's get back to the topic. The topic is the misery and suffering caused by the New Testament. And the scientific miracle, which you ran away for 20 minutes, was how Islam removed it. Look, he could have said, no, it doesn't. Look at the alcohol verse. It doesn't do anything. When science says that Muslim women are 50 times less likely to give birth to a fetal alcohol child, you should have refuted that. You should have refuted the fact that you defend. How do you explain a disgusting virginity test in your book? This is stupidity. From a scientific perspective, I'm speaking, okay? That is stupidity. How do you defend this? Islam removed the silly evil and liberated these women from these horrible curses. And then we get to the issue of epilepsy. You know, how do you explain that the Bible causes a confusion between the epileptic and an alleged demon-possessed person, and then Muhammad removes all of this? This is what our talking points are. We're going to have our 15-minute discussion, and it's going to be barbecue time. Okay, because it's very clear you don't have any answers for the arguments I presented to you. So I guess that's my 5 minutes. Or is it 5 minutes?
Yeah, that'll be all. Thank you, Nadir.
Okay.
Your camera is a little bit stuck, but maybe you can just pop out and pop back in, and then after that we can just
we can hear you.
off.
I got my
we
mic
can hear you
off.
just fine.
Okay, let me turn it off.
Yeah, but next up is Reverend Green's 5-minute rebuttal, and then after that we'll move into our 15-minute open discussion.
Can you give me a minute? I have to jump out of the room because my camera's all messed up here.
Yeah, go right ahead. Yeah, so we'll do that, and then we'll have Q&A. So make sure that you're posting your.
I won't do anything till he gets back.
Yeah. But yeah, make sure you're posting your questions. If you have questions for the debaters, type Q : followed by your question, and we'll just wait for Nadir to get back, and then it'll be rebuttal time for Samuel. So this is quite the lively debate. We have offers of gift cards and all sorts of things going on. My goodness. So, but yeah, all right.
Okay, and I won't call this up just yet, but I've got a screen to share. But if you can, I don't want that up just yet. I'll put it up. Okay, so we're all ready?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that was an interesting rebuttal because you began by saying that I didn't refute any of your points. Well, that was because I was giving my presentation. So the presentation is where you give your presentation, and then the rebuttal is where you give your rebuttal. So it's a little bizarre that you're asking why I didn't refute your points in my presentation. Now, regarding the points that you have raised, what you're doing there is not representing the standard way in which Muslims present the Quran as a scientific miracle. You're just doing something completely different. And okay, you're able to do that. But as I showed from all the different books and videos and everything that you can get, the normal way that Muslims are saying the Quran is a scientific miracle is by the claims that I've been looking at. And I did give facts. I'm quoting verses from the Quran. Let's quickly look at some of these now. You're saying that the bones had, the description of the bones and the flesh was correct in the Quran. No, it's not, because it talks about the bones being made first, thumma, then the flesh. And that's not the case. There's one inside the other. You said that the description of the birds in the Quran is correct because it's just describing what you see. But no, it's very clear that it says nothing holds them up. And so my points stand. And even with the mountains, as I said, the mountains are where the tectonic plates go together. There may well be sections going down underneath, but that doesn't mean they're giving stability. And that's what the verses say. So my points stand there. Now let's look at some of these points you've given here. You were saying that the Bible is unscientific in these various areas, and this has led to untold suffering. Well, it hasn't led to untold suffering. So with the virginity test, first of all, within biblical Christianity and God's religion, virginity is important. Virginity is important. And we see not having sex before marriage as an important thing. And so the Bible gives a common test, yes, there may be occasions where that doesn't happen, but this is where the book of Proverbs comes in the Bible, because the Bible is more than just commands. The Bible also has other things like the book of Proverbs, which is about wisdom and discerning things in other ways. And this is just the way that the virginity test would work. That and we see this with Joseph and Mary, don't we? That Mary is obviously a virgin, but Joseph, when he finds out that she's had a child, he's gracious to her. He takes a different course of action. He could have asked for her to be stoned to death, but he doesn't take that course. There are other things you can do, and this is the case with the virginity test. It's one test among many, and you can you apply general wisdom. Now, what about epileptics? Well, in the gospel, we actually see a distinction between demon possession and epileptics, and so yes, at that time, people did think that demon possession and epilepsy went together, but the Bible makes a distinction between the two, and you can read that in the Gospels. But as Christians, we do believe in evil spirits. We do believe in possession. So I don't know, are you denying evil spirits? Are you denying possession? Because as Christians, we say that there is a supernatural realm, and that when Jesus was engaging with people, he was engaging with some people who were epileptic. We can read that in the gospel. Some who were demon possessed. And again, the book of Proverbs says you've got to learn your science, you've got to learn your medicine, and then you can distinguish the two. With alcohol, well, the Bible is clear that you're not to be a drunkard. And so it's drunkenness that leads to those problems. And if Muslims have less of that particular issue because of less of birth defects because of alcohol, good on them. Good on them. I don't have a problem with that. But the Bible is clear against drunkenness. And regarding meat, you're saying you shouldn't eat all different types of meat because some meat like monkey and everything can give you problems. Well, again, we don't eat monkey, right? We don't eat monkey brains. I'm not interested in eating that. The way I eat is according to the book of Proverbs, and that is I eat with wisdom. And so the book of Proverbs is all about wisdom. Again, the Bible is not all about commands. It's about wisdom and seeking wisdom and learning. And what we eat comes into the category of learning. So, for instance, sugar, you shouldn't eat too much sugar. Do I do that because of the Bible, not eat it? Or do I do it because of wisdom and learning? Well, the Bible encourages me to eat according to wisdom and learning. So to finish up, the Quran does not have any scientific understanding. It's not a scientific miracle. And the examples he's given of the Bible are just distractions from the actual question.
Thank you so much, Samuel. Now we will be moving into our 15 minutes of open discussion. I just want to say, hit the like button if you're enjoying things so far. It's free and it helps us out. And make sure to submit your questions for Q&A. All right, 15 minutes of open discussion.
Okay. Well, I've got a question. So
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry,
hello.
you're muted.
I'm sorry. Yeah, Samuel, I'm just going to answer you very quickly here. When I say that the New Testament is responsible for the needless suffering and misery in epileptics, that is what the scientific community states. And I'm sharing my desktop. We can read this together. This is from the International League Against Epilepsy. It says a passage in St. Mark's Gospel accurately describes tonic-clonic seizure, but concludes that the child contained a spirit of dumbness. In the Christian world, this biblical story led to the belief shared by many Greeks, Latin priests, that epileptics were demonics. I'm sorry.
Okay, well, can
I
I
have
answer that?
3 different references from science,
Yeah,
all
okay.
blaming the Bible.
Yeah. No, well,
Okay.
first of all, I want to say that demon possession is real. Okay.
Yeah, I don't agree.
Demon
I don't
possession
have
is
a
real.
problem with that.
Okay.
That's
So
fine. That's fine.
no, so you agree with me, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it takes human wisdom to discern when it's epilepsy and demon possession. You seem to be denying, like the track you're taking and the references you're giving deny demon possession totally. Now, so you're actually denying Islam at this point. Yeah, no,
No,
hang on, let me
Samuel.
finish.
Hold on. Let
You
me
are
answer
denying
you.
Islam
Okay.
because you're
Okay.
denying that demons can
Yeah.
possess people and give these types of symptoms. Now,
Okay.
it takes
Let me
wisdom.
answer
Let
you.
me finish. It takes
Yeah. Okay.
wisdom to discern between them. It takes wisdom to discern between them. I'm not throwing out either. And I'm saying that we need wisdom to discern between them. But I'm absolutely saying that demon possession is real and people should not get involved in demonic and witchcraft and that type of thing because that may affect them.
Okay, let me answer you. Nobody's denying that demon possession
Well,
exists. You
yes,
are
you are.
not understanding what is the argument being presented to you. So I really need you to pay attention. And you're running away from the scientific references, which clearly is telling you that the problem here is it's not that, okay, well, demon possession don't exist. The problem is that in Mark 9:18, it lists the symptoms for alleged demon possession. Well, those just happen to be the same symptoms of epileptics. And no,
Yep.
the Bible offers you
Yep.
no wisdom on how you can tell the difference between the two.
Well,
That's why the scientific references you are running away from, which is blaming the Bible, is telling you
okay.
this is the
Yeah.
cause
Well,
of the problem. Hold on, let me give you another reference. Okay, this is from Carl Oaten, 2
yeah.
neuroscientists. It said that
Both are
Christianization.
denying demon
Yeah.
possession.
No, they're not doing that. Please read carefully. Nobody's
Well, show me
denying
where
that.
they accept
Okay.
demon
Okay.
possession as an
Nobody
alternative
is
because you're
denying that.
denying
Okay.
Islam.
Nobody is denying demon possession. You're making things up because you cannot. The scientists have already concluded, done their research, and they're blaming the New Testament for causing this horrible confusion. They're blaming the New Testament for the stigmatization of epileptics. I have
Okay.
3
Are you going to let me
references for
reply?
you.
Are you going to
Okay,
okay?
reply to the
Show me.
science.
No, show me where the
Okay.
scientists are saying that demon possession is real.
They don't care. That's the problem. It has
This
not.
is
They're
my
not
issue.
denying it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So
We've done
let's.
this issue.
Okay.
We've done this issue.
Let's
I'm
go to Mark.
saying that you're
Hold on a
quoting to
second.
me people. You are
Mhm.
quoting to me people who disregard demon possession. I'm saying I accept both,
They're
and that
not
we need
doing
wisdom
that.
to
You are
determine between
You are
them.
just making things up because you
I'm not
cannot
making
refute the
anything up.
argument. Okay, so let's look at this. Okay, Mark 9:18 says that when this alleged a demon came to this boy, he foams at the mouth, gnashes
Yep.
at his teeth, and becomes rigid. Those are the symptoms of an epileptic. So my question for you, Samuel, is if the Bible is true, then that means people at the epilepsy center, looks like I can take you there. That means a lot of them, this is at the Mayo Clinic, okay? At the Mayo Clinic, a lot of those people could be demon possessed because they got the same symptoms. How do you know the difference between the two? So if you truly believe in the New Testament, will you contact them and tell them that, hey, some of your patients could be demon possessed because our religion tells us that they share the same symptoms? Will you do that if you're a true
Well,
believer?
Well, first of all, having the same symptoms doesn't mean it's the same disease. That's
But how do you
basic
know?
medicine.
We got to
No,
find out.
let me finish. Having the same
Right.
symptoms doesn't mean you've got the same disease. That's a fact, right? You can have
Sure.
multiple diseases with the same symptom. Now,
Correct.
what I'm saying is that when the Lord Jesus Christ was there, he understood that on this case, it was a demon and he cast out the demon. Now, as Christians, we consider through learning, through wisdom, through medicine, we try to work out all these things as best as we can according to science. Now, sometimes it will be epilepsy. Sometimes it is demon possession. I'm not going to deny demon possession. Now, we need to move on. I've answered that one.
You didn't answer my question. I'm going to ask you again.
No, I did. I said I would consider
if the
both.
New Testament is true, okay, then that means
I've answered
logic. Hold on, so the logic dictates that a lot of people at the Mayo Clinic who suffer from epilepsy may not actually have epilepsy. They could be demon possessed because they share the same symptoms. So if you truly believe in this book, then I'm challenging you to go to Mayo Clinic and tell them that it's possible that some of your patients could be demon possessed. Will you accept that challenge? You should rescue them. If the New Testament, you really believe it, then you have to do it if you truly believe in that book.
I want everyone to notice how you've changed your argument now. You're now saying some might. You've gone from epilepsy in the Bible is saying demon, everyone possessed by a demon is an epileptic. Well, I never said that. I'm saying the Bible distinguishes between the two.
No, it doesn't.
Absolutely. If someone's shaking on the ground, I will consider whether or not they're demon possessed. But I want to. We've spent 7 minutes on that question. We've got 15 minutes. It's my turn to ask a question.
Okay, so you failed the challenge. You know this is a bunch of baloney that your Bible's feeding you. If you truly believed in this book, I would have done it. I would have went right to Mayo Clinic, guys, and other Christians have, by the way. CARM, CARM.org. The guy who moderated that debate said, yes, I will go there.
Let's give Samuel a turn here.
Yeah, you're taking up all the time on a question that I've given my answer. I'd like
you don't believe in this book.
But I want to continue on this epileptic theme. Can I have my screen, please?
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's interesting when you look at Muhammad. So this is in one of your points, you were saying that that epilepsy is interpreted as demon possession, but it's also interpreted as inspiration. So this is what happened to Muhammad. A hard and severe condition would come upon him. He would hear ringing of bells. He would faint and fall down. He would sweat as on a cold day. His face would go red and he would breathe heavily. He would snort like a camel. His mouth and lips would quiver, right? Now, that's epilepsy as well. So if you want to do this whole epilepsy thing, and in fact, when you look at what's this Russian guy's name, Dostoevsky, I think it is. He talks about Muhammad. He talks about Muhammad as experiencing epileptic fits in the same way that he did, and he says, don't be against it. So how do you know that Muhammad is not? So that'll do for my display. How do you know that Muhammad's not having an epileptic fit? Because they were interpreted as inspiration back in the day.
Right. Okay. So because I don't practice medicine without a license, what you're doing is something called malpractice, I guess, medical malpractice, something like. So this is something for the doctors. Hold on. Let me repeat. No. I presented references from science. Everything I said was backed up by neurologists and I presented my references on the screen. Nobody is going to look at those symptoms from the medical community and declare that to be epilepsy. Okay, so where's the reference? You're not even a doctor, Samuel, and you're pretending to be a doctor up here. So that's silly. But you asked me, how do I know this is not epilepsy? Well, what if it was? Who cares? I don't care. See, if somebody's epileptic or not, I could care less. The issue here tonight, how we know Muhammad is a true prophet, is because he corrected the scientific mistakes of the Bible. When that epileptic came to Muhammad, he would not accuse him of being demon possessed. He said, I will pray for you. And you know, my other Christian friends from Carm Ministry and other than them, they took up that challenge and they said, yes, Nadir, I will contact Mayo Clinic because I truly believe in the Bible. And when the Bible says that these type of symptoms describe a demon-possessed person, and at Mayo Clinic, if people got those symptoms, then yes, it's possible those guys could be demon possessed.
It is possible.
Okay,
but it is possible.
Okay, then I'm going to pay for your airfare. Go to Mayo and tell them some of their patients are demon possessed. You should. I would. My friends did. Why are you not doing it? That's the question.
When I would bring that up as a consideration. Absolutely. So I do consider that. If I see somebody shaking on the ground, so if I saw someone doing what we just saw Muhammad doing, I would think maybe this person's demon possessed. If I saw someone with ringing in the air, snorting like a camel, doing the things that I just showed you with Muhammad, I would think, what's going on with this person? Is it epilepsy? Is it demon possession?
That's off topic. The issue of Mayo Clinic and description of Muhammad is off topic, okay? There are two different things you're talking about here. Now we go back, as I said, all you're doing is presenting quackology to us. If the symptoms of Muhammad were really epilepsy, bring your references. Which scientist
I have given you the references.
At that? You have no reference. You pointed out some quack. Okay, the issue, but even if it was, it's irrelevant. The issue here is, does the Quran, does Islam alleviate the misery and suffering caused by the New Testament? That's the argument you're not able to touch. Look, the issue is this. For centuries, as historians and scientists have pointed out, the New Testament is to blame for the stigmatization of epileptics, because when they did have these seizures, they go, pss, pss, pss. You see, when he goes, like that, he's really demon possessed.
Well, okay.
And they had to live with that for so long.
You're just mockery now. It's just mockery. You're not even engaging with the issue.
That's what scientists have said, that the scientists have said this book stigmatizes epileptic people, and they've suffered for 2,000 years because of the New Testament. And Islam came and abolished this.
And let me say, those same scientists don't accept demon possession. And I'm saying I accept both. And let me finish. Stop cutting me off. All you do is cut me off. All right. I said I accept both. I believe that there are spiritual forces in this world and there are medical conditions. I also believe that the effect of sin in this world, which is spiritual, leads to medical conditions as well. So it's more complex than just this. And so I do consider both. But my question for you is, why didn't you bring up all the standard Muslim arguments that we see? The ones you've brought up, very unusual ones. It seems as though you were staying away from the standard arguments that Muslims bring up. Why didn't you bring those up?
Because number one, the arguments I'm presenting is something, if you can, I'll share my screen real quick, is with the atheist and agnostic community has reviewed my arguments, and they have given a partial endorsement in which they do agree that Prophet Muhammad did correct these scientific mistakes in the Bible. So since we've got such a large agreement on these, therefore the only people who are deaf, dumb, and blind right now are the Christians. And it's their turn to now accept. So this is something everybody agrees on. So the issue of, we can move on. And the issue, I want to correct you on the virginity test. I'm quoting from the Sun article right over here. It states it has no scientific merit. The presence or lack of a hymen is not really evidence that sex has taken place. It could break during a fall. And they say it's based upon a misunderstanding of the human female body. I am challenging you today to condemn any kind of virginity test, blood on the bed sheets or anything.
Well, hang on. Islam has virginity tests.
No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't.
Well, we'd have to go and search on that. You'd have to give some evidence as to where it says that there is no virginity test. So
yes, scholars have talked about this. You want to see the fatwa from the scholars?
Yeah. So, but my answer to that was simply that. Hang on. Coming back to where you said at the beginning, because you moved on to a different thing there. Again, you're talking about, you've referred to the atheists and science, but again, the atheists who you're saying agree with you deny the spiritual realm. They're not even accepting it. So you're getting evidence from people who are denying the spiritual realm altogether. And I'm saying that we need to hold both together. We need to hold together that there is a spiritual aspect to life, that demon possession is a real thing, and that medical conditions are real things. And we need to have wisdom to understand between those two. And there may be occasions when somebody needs to be exorcised of a demon. I don't know what those occasions are. I would want to be careful in that and go to people with experience. But I'm not going to just refer to atheists who just are going to say, oh, demon possession is just how they used to understand epilepsy in the old days. It's not true to the New Testament, first of all, because it distinguishes between the two. And it's a denial of the spiritual realm. It's a denial of evil in this world.
Okay. No, but let me just answer that. The atheists, the scientists are not claiming that the divine or all this stuff, supernatural doesn't exist. They're not saying that. What they're saying is that we're sick and tired of seeing the Bible stigmatize these epileptics, and we are going to speak out. It has nothing to do with their religion. That's what's going on here.
Yeah. Well, it has everything to do with their religion. Okay. Anyway, that's our 15 minutes.
All right, that was quite the lively open discussion there. But let's move on to our Q&A. If you haven't asked your question yet, Q : and then your question. We currently have about 8 questions, and if you're not the one the question is directed at, you still have the option to respond, but you don't have to. Let's begin with this one for both. Where exactly does Muhammad state that the forbiddance of alcohol was due to a scientific benefit? Where does Muhammad or the Quran make this connection between the two?
Yeah, I think that's an argument. The issue is this: does the Quran is it really true that because of the Quran, Muslim women are 50 times less likely to give birth to a fetal alcohol child? That's absolutely true. Now, when you're saying, I want you to write down that this is the real reason behind it. No, I don't have to do that. All I have to show you is that Islam is removing the needless misery and suffering caused by the New Testament and saving these children. That's an absolutely true statement. Because of Muhammad, millions of children have been rescued because of fetal alcohol syndrome. So the question which I have for Sam is, how do you explain an alleged false prophet saving millions of children from FAS while the true Lord and Savior let them perish? Both Muhammad and Jesus gave an answer on alcohol. Muhammad's answer is superior than allegedly Jesus's answer on the Bible.
Yep. So I'll answer it now. So the Quran never, it's a process by which the Quran bans alcohol. So was it Surah 2, verse 219, it says, they ask you about wine and gambling, say, in them is great sin and yet some benefit for the people, but their sin is greater than their benefit. So it's not saying that there's no benefit there. And I think there's also a verse, I can't find it at the moment, where it talks about don't come to prayers drunk. And so we see this progression within the Quran where Muhammad's attitude towards alcohol goes from, it would seem, an earlier acceptance to hardening to rejecting it. When we read the Hadith, we see that one of the reasons for banning it was for jihad, that it kept men in a better state of mind so they could go and conquer others if they weren't drinking alcohol. So they're the two reasons. You could look the alcohol one up. I can't get it immediately at hand.
All right. We have another one. Question for Nadir. Did Allah not know the effects of drinking alcohol prior to its abrogation, since he allowed Muslims to drink but forbade they showed up in this state to prayer?
It has nothing to do with the argument which I am presenting today here, okay? In that, Islam removes the evil of the New Testament. Evil I'm defining as needless misery and suffering which is preventable, caused by your belief. That's my argument here tonight. And as you can see, nobody's touching that argument because it's absolutely true, backed by science. I showed the scientific references. Nowhere did it allow for alcohol to be drunken. It turned a blind eye in the beginning because it's giving the people this detoxification period. But the issue, and I will raise my question again, which Samuel ran away from. The issue is this. Let's just pretend there's a child choking, okay? And Jesus is just watching this child choking. Muhammad comes in 30 seconds later, says, oh my God, and rescues this child and pulls out that thing and saves the child. All eyes will be on Jesus. What the hell were you doing waiting there? Didn't you see this kid suffering? That's a problem which is caused by the issue of alcohol between Muhammad and Jesus. Muhammad saved millions of children from fetal alcohol syndrome while Jesus let them perish, which is,
Yeah,
I believe in Jesus myself, but the Jesus of the New Testament I'm talking about. So that question right there destroys Christianity, because we see that what I am saying is true, that Islam removes the evil of the New Testament. And that argument has gone unchallenged tonight.
Okay, just in reply, Nadir is just ignoring everything. It's just amazing listening to you. The Bible is strictly against alcoholism. It's strictly against getting drunk, right? So it's explicit. It explicitly says, do not get drunk. And so if people were living the Christian life, they wouldn't have those problems. Drunkenness is not coming from the Bible. To say that the Bible promotes drunkenness is just dishonest. You're just being dishonest.
No, nobody cares about drunkenness. That's not what this is about. We're talking about moderate amount of alcohol, just a little bit. Okay, so and alcohol is a gateway drug. It introduces you to all the other drugs. That's a scientific fact. So saying, okay, it does allow a little bit, then the Bible has been disproved, because alcohol is a gateway to these other things. So you've just disproved the Bible by saying that it even allows this sick and ridiculous drug, which alcohol is. But my argument you are not touching. How do you explain that Muhammad saved millions of children from FAS while the true Lord and Savior let them perish? That makes no sense. There's only one sensible explanation, and that is that what your belief is, it is wrong, and Muhammad is correcting it. There's no other sensible explanation, which we see here.
Okay. All right. We have another question for Nadir. Muhammad said nothing can make water impure. Is that a scientifically true claim according to the CDC? If not, how can we trust this scientific claim?
This is all off topic. This is all off topic. I am talking about something, and you guys are off in la la land, and it's very good because they see that my 20-minute presentation, it is unchallengeable. And the reason why you're talking about pure water is because everything I said was backed by modern science. I produced the scientific references. You can't argue against that. You can't argue against the fact that, yes, the Bible does cause confusion between an epileptic and a demon-possessed person. You can't argue against anything I have presented. You cannot defend a virginity test. And I have challenged Samuel for a third time. I'm challenging you to condemn any kind of virginity test because, as science says, these are unscientific and they're oppressive against women. So I'm challenging you today, Samuel, to condemn this evil which is found in your book.
Okay, well, no, I'm not going to condemn it because virginity in marriage is a very important thing. It
cannot be determined.
Can you stop interrupting and just saying what you'd like me to say? Right? You're really rude to debate with, right? I give my answer and then you just ignore it. Like it's phenomenal speaking with you. So the reason why there are virginity tests and the reason why the Bible has the one that it does is because that was the common test. And on most times that will work. And then, as I said, there's the book of Proverbs, which says that we are wise and we apply our wisdom as well in these understandings. And we see this elsewhere in the Bible. So we're not going to give up on virginity being an important thing. It's an important thing. And there are ways that you need to safeguard it and check for it and make sure that it's happening. You just don't ignore it. But coming back to the question, because what I notice here is that you just divert the question away from what was originally said. The original question said that Muhammad said you can't make clean, dirty water clean. Well, of course you can through evaporation, and that's just another example of an error from Muhammad. Now, what was the next question, please?
Yeah, the next question, I don't know if this is maybe a little bit more trolling, but he asks, is the Quran a scientific miracle when it says it's okay to be...
No, we don't. No,
All
okay.
right.
No,
It's
okay.
all part of this. Okay,
No,
I'll
okay.
answer this.
Hang
Hold
on.
on a second.
There's a point there. There's a
No.
point there.
Yeah.
There's a
Okay.
point there. Thank you, whoever brought that up. Thank you very much, because this brings untold suffering to Muslim women. Surah 4, verse 34.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for this question. I didn't think it set the thing, but how much untold suffering, Nadir,
Can I
does this
respond?
bring to women when scientifically we know that there's got to be a better way? Thank you for that
Okay.
question. That's
Wait a
excellent.
second. But this is okay. Do I even get a chance to answer any of this?
Go.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, what we're seeing here is that Christians are hurting very badly, and they're trying to throw anything, at us to try to somehow salvage this debate. But the arguments which I'm presenting, they're not touching. They're bringing up impure water, which is easy to refute. Beating wise, it's easy to refute. Okay, when the verse which you are quoting inside chapter 4, verse 34, that in no way describes spousal abuse. And in fact, I'm going to share my screen. I'm way off topic. I'd like to get back on topic about that virginity test, but as you can see, the Christians are diverting our attention away from the evidence. But I'll get back on topic here. The Prophet Muhammad, he never struck a servant or a woman. The verse which if you actually read the Quran, you'll find a verse in the Quran inside chapter 38, verse 44, and it says, "Take with your hand a bundle and strike her with it." And the dikhtan is referred to like a bundle of grass. This is talking about beating your wife. So in the sense, like, if you're going to use a bundle of grass or something light like a pillow, something like that, then this is okay. According to chapter 30 is for 44. So that argument has been debunked. Let's get back on topic. I want to make a correction here. Nobody is saying virginity is unimportant. Virginity is very important according to Muslims as well. Okay? But to any kind of determination test to determine if this girl's a virgin, this is false, this is oppressive, and this is unscientific. And I am not asking you to do away with virginity, Samuel. I'm asking you to do away with any kind of test to determine virginity, because this is unscientific.
Okay, well, that's not the question. So, I mean, you keep coming back to this when it wasn't the question. So I don't know why you keep coming back to this when that wasn't the question. The question was about beating wives.
It's off topic, dude.
Well, it's not off topic, because you're saying that true science will alleviate suffering. Now, this person has correctly brought out that when the Quran teaches wife beating, that increases suffering. Now, you incorrectly said that Muhammad never beat his wives or his wives or slaves. That is not true. So I'm reading from Sahih Muslim.
Hitting Aisha in her chest, right? Yeah, I can help you. Hitting Aisha in her chest. Yeah.
Let me finish.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's Sahih Muslim, book 4, verse number 2127. And it says that he, Muhammad, struck me, Aisha, on the chest, and it caused me pain. So he's not. Right?
Yeah.
I'll let everyone look it up themselves.
Can I respond? You see, I knew you were going to say that, because, see, Aisha, this goes back to your misunderstanding of Islam. Aisha is not a woman. She's a girl. She's a 9-year-old child. Okay, so from Islamic point of view, can you spank a child? You can. But Muhammad never hit a woman, and the Quran makes it very clear that we're really just talking about a bundle of grass. But I want to get back to the issue of, it looks like, Samuel, you are rejecting science so that you can believe in your Bible. And when I showed you scientific references saying that virginity tests are unscientific, you are refusing that. This is not the question
anymore. You just keep
this is
back
not
to that.
The topic about beating women.
What's the next question? Sorry, we've got to move on to the next question.
Okay,
You're just wanting to keep coming back to this because I guess you feel this is your only point that you can make.
No, there's a
lot more. We're
meant
to be answering questions. We're meant to be answering questions from the viewers.
They're hurting. I can see that.
All right. I'm going to move on. So we have someone asking, can you define miracle for us so that we know what you're attempting to prove? Because he says, we need to. You say we're going off topic, but the title of the debate is the Quran a scientific miracle?
Mm-hmm. Right. So what I'm showing, the miracle over here, is somehow the Prophet Muhammad knew about the scientific errors of the Bible, which caused this needless and preventable needless suffering in mankind. Somehow he knew about it, and then he corrected those horrible teachings. That can only come from God. A man Muhammad was an illiterate man. He could not read or write. But how could he have this type of sophisticated scientific understanding? That is a miracle that can only come from God. That is my argument, which I have presented tonight, which has gone unchallenged totally. You see, Samuel never was even able to even address the science alone. So I think that's my definition of what a miracle here that we are looking at here.
Okay. A miracle is when well, the examples that I've given, it's where there would be information that Muhammad would have in the Quran, which was clearly unknown at the time. And so the examples that I gave of, for instance, where the Quran says that nothing holds birds up in the sky, right? That's how Muhammad understood it. If Muhammad had actually described air pressure and done all that type of thing, you might think, wow, that's really sophisticated. That's miraculous. But he doesn't. He says that nothing holds birds up, and that's just scientifically
It
wrong.
doesn't say that.
And so that's just what we find. Okay, so there needs to be some type of outstanding material in the Quran which would indicate its miraculous nature. Now, the examples that Nadir have given, they're just common sense examples, or ones where he actually hasn't even he's just not even listening to the reply, where I've kept saying that we apply wisdom. The Bible's not just a book of commands, it's a book of wisdom and learning, and that's how Christians answer it as well. So there we go. Next question.
All right. Based on all the descriptions of Muhammad in Islamic sources, was Muhammad a demoniac or an epileptic or both? If neither explain his symptoms. Thank you.
Yeah, though this debate proved tonight beyond a reasonable shadow of a doubt that you are worshiping a demon. It is a demon who brings needless suffering to mankind. Preventable, needless suffering by subjecting women who have been sexually molested to virginity tests. Women who have been, they were not born with a hymen, subjecting them to a virginity test. This is the work of the devil.
Okay.
It's subjecting epileptics and stigmatizing them because if you look at an epileptic, you don't know if he is demon possessed or if he really has some kind of neurological problem. Now remember, the science of epilepsy and what was really going on with it was something only discovered recently. But what about 100 years ago when nobody knew? Then every epileptic looks like a demon possessed person. Why? Because the New Testament stigmatized them by saying they share the same symptoms. Okay, this is the work of the devil.
Okay.
The work of the devil is what you saw, allowing a gateway drug like alcohol to be drunk. That is the work of the devil. Muhammad comes and removes all of this.
Okay.
So that's the guidance I'm trying to share with you.
Okay. So I'm going to try to answer the question. I want everyone to notice what Nadir did. The question was, with all of the symptoms that Muhammad had when he was being inspired, how do you interpret that? Now, notice he didn't even answer the question at all. Right? Didn't even answer the question at all. I showed how Muhammad had a severe condition with the ringing of bells in his ears, that he would faint and fall down. Imagine just walking along, fainting, falling down, that you would sweat as on a cold day. Your face would go red and you would breathe heavily and snort like a camel and your lips would quiver. Now, what the person has asked the question there saying, how do you interpret that? Now, notice that Nadir didn't even try to answer it at all. He keeps saying, Samuel's running away. Samuel's running away. I'm not running away from anything. I'm not running away from anything. I put up all the references. Now, in my understanding, well, I think Muhammad's probably an epileptic in some sense because they are the symptoms of that type of condition. Okay. But obviously, it might be more than that. I don't know. Next question.
All right. We have for Nadir, in our debate, you admitted Muhammad had a demon and that you yourself have one appointed by Allah. Do you still hold to that belief? Thank you.
I don't know who is it that I was debating.
This is from Truth Defenders. I don't know if you.
In our debate, you admit had a demon, and that no, I never admitted that. I never. I think who is following the demon is clear in this debate. I wish the Christians, I wish Samuel would address my arguments tonight. But the problem is they are arrogant. They don't want to admit they are wrong. But I tell you what, the atheists, the agnostics, they are on my side on this, as I've shown you the references. So you guys are fooling nobody. Okay. It is very clear that Muhammad corrected the scientific errors of the Bible. What is evil? I'm telling you what evil is. A child who has been sexually molested, and now she must subject herself to a virginity test. That's evil. A
Would she?
child, and that's a kind of evil that the Bible promotes, because the Bible, and first of all, there is no legitimate way to determine a woman's virginity. This is what the scientists have said. Virginity is good. We promote it for everybody, but there is no way to determine that. Yet the Bible promotes a virginity test, a clear scientific error. Muhammad removes this evil. That's how we know
Okay.
he's a true prophet of God, not an evil prophet. Do you see that? It's common sense.
Yeah. Well, okay. I mean, that was not the question. You just keep coming back to that. It's almost the only question you give to
Yeah.
the only answer you give to any question. I don't know. How are we going for time there?
Yeah, we're doing okay. We just have a few more questions here.
Okay.
All right. So we have for Nadir, hasn't marrying and divorcing children increased needless suffering of girls for centuries?
Mm-hmm. So now it looks like the topic has changed. We don't want to talk about the New Testament. We don't want to talk about how Islam is correcting the New Testament. Where the Christians are trying to take us is, if I could show some problems of the Quran, maybe somehow this could salvage tonight's debate. Maybe I could remain a Christian. No, even if what you are saying is true, you still have to leave Christianity, because it has been proved that Christianity promotes evil. Evil, as I defined it, the needless suffering. But let me get to your question very quickly here. Nowhere in Islam does it promote marrying children. That's very clear. Okay, in fact, the Quran gives a criteria for who you should find, who you should choose your partner when you grow up and marry, and the one who is most pleasing in who has the best character and best religion. You're not going to find that inside some kid. Okay, that's just not possible. And also, in addition to that, both parties have to be consenting. If the woman, or in this case, let's say the female, has any kind of dissent in this marriage, then it's null and void. And so therefore you could go into any child's room and say, oh, you're going to get married to this one guy over here. The kid's going to be crying. They go, I don't want to go. I don't want to go. So the marriage is null and void. So like this, if people follow Islam, they're never going to marry a child. As far as the marriage between Aisha and Muhammad, that's a different story. This is a Q&A. I can't really get into all that right now. So please, give me a break here, and I can get into these topics at another time.
I just want to say that to say that Muhammad's example is not binding for Muslims is an amazing thing for me to hear you say, because the Hadith Sahih Bukhari is clear that Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6. He didn't treat her as a child. He treated her as a wife. He married her when she was 6, and he consummated the marriage when she was 9. And this is an issue in the Islamic world. Child marriages are an issue in the Islamic world. They just are. And so, this is going against everything you're claiming, that the Quran brings this scientific freedom and reducing of human suffering, when clearly it doesn't in this area.
All right, we have, is Allah morally blameworthy for waiting so long to correct the scientific evils of the Bible?
Well, okay, now thank God we're back on topic. The issues about Aisha and all the topic, again, please keep in mind, I just got a few minutes to even properly address these arguments. This should be a Q&A on the debate we just had. What's happening here is that we're having a debate after the debate. The Q&A's got to address the stuff which we have been talking about. Okay, so I hope you guys don't, you have to understand that in the Q&A time, I don't have time to open up all these topics and address them in a proper way. It's just not done like that. But to answer your question, this is a guy who's finally on topic, who's finally getting it. So the question here, that is true. Allah allowed this wickedness and evil, and not just in Christianity, but the wickedness and evil in Hinduism. In Hinduism, we saw the caste system. We see that children are literally starved from eating nutritious food because they don't believe in eating eggs. They don't believe in eating cows. So the question here is, and that's a question maybe I may not be able to answer, is why does God allow evil to happen? That is one of the mysteries of God, but the solution and his mercy is found in Islam. Islam removes this horrible evil. It removes the stigma of women not passing the virginity test, epileptics being stigmatized as being demon possessed. It removes all that evil. It removes the evil of giving birth to a child which has fetal alcohol syndrome. So I think that is undeniable. That is what we have seen in tonight's debate, and that is clear. Sam was not able to refute these arguments. Rather, we started a new debate. Okay.
Okay. We haven't started another debate, and you're not answering the question. You just keep coming back to your same point, and I don't know. I don't even have anything to say there. All right. We're finishing up. How much time we got to go?
Yeah, we'll just have 8 minutes for our closings in total. We have a few more questions. Let me just read them real quick.
Okay.
Okay, how about we can make these real quick. I mean, does the Quran contradict science today on the process on the conception and development of a child in the woman? I think it's just talking about like fetal development. I think it's talking about.
Oh, well, okay. What? I've given the references there in my debate where I say that the order in which the Quran speaks is actually just repeating Galen from AD 150. That was the common understanding. And Muhammad's just reflecting the common science of the time. And science today says something different. So, yes, I'd say it's not it's a very general description.
Samuel, I'm going to press you on that because this is going to be your barbecue time, okay? Why don't you give exactly post the verse of the Quran and tell us where it contradicts modern science, okay?
Sure.
I want to give you that opportunity, and then we'll have some barbecue today. Samuel Kebabs.
Okay, so it says, then we created of a drop of semen a clot. Stage one, the clot. Then we created of the clot a tissue. Then we created of the tissue bones. Then we garmented the bones in flesh. Now that is wrong. It's all taking place simultaneously within itself. So that's Surah 23, verse 14.
Wait a second. Let me get some clarification.
Wrong description.
Okay, just to get a clarification for your barbecue, you're saying that the cartilage and bones, they form at the same time, right?
I'm saying there's not a pile of bones that then get skin put onto the top.
Okay, right? Hold on. So you're saying that you're saying that there's a bone and flesh never cover bones, right?
I am reading what it says here.
Do you have any reference from science to back up what you're saying, which you don't?
Well, yes, I do. Just from general science.
Share your screen and show us.
We don't have it. I don't have it here. It's okay. Common knowledge.
Let me share my screen and let me educate you, okay? Because nobody.
Show me. No, you need to show us where there is just bones unclothed, because that's what the Quran's saying.
Here we go.
Show us where there are bones with no flesh around them.
Here we go.
Show me the science.
Right. You have no scientific references
to give evidence for the absurd.
Okay, let's see what science says. Okay, this is from Ken Hub. This is what the medical students study from. Look what it says over here. In limbs, myoblasts migrate to the limb buds and surround the primordial limb bones.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay, so this is flesh surrounding the bones. Look, it says here, muscles develop in situ from the mesenchyme around the developing limb bones. Now, yes, look, I shared this reference for you, and I'll share it for you again. Yeah, this is explicit from Professor Zachary Murphy. It says, remember we talked about how we make the skull, all the bones and cartilages and all that stuff? What are we covering all that with now? The muscle, which is flesh. Let's go back to the Quran. We covered the bones with flesh. Exactly what Zachary Murphy is
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah,
Word
it's
for
all
word
happening
agreement.
at the same. It's all happening at the same time. The
That
Quran
where
uses
did you
this
get
word
that from?
Duma.
Okay.
The
Okay.
Quran. Well, first
Yeah.
of all, the
You're
Quran is just saying what Galen says.
no, it
Okay,
doesn't.
it's just reflecting what Galen
Well, let's
says, and
deal
I've
with
already given
science
that
first.
reference.
Let's deal with a scientific
Right?
issue
No,
here.
it's
Okay.
just saying what Galen says, and I've already showed that. But secondly, what I've said is that
Okay.
there are the bones, and then it says the bones are all covered. Now, it's all happening within itself. Just look at the photos.
Sam, you have no scientific reference for what you're talking about. If you
Yes, I do.
listen to what Zachary Murphy is saying here, let's read it again. Remember, we talked about how we made the skull, all the bones and cartilage and all that stuff. What are we covering all that with now? The muscle. That's
Yep.
exactly what is written in the Quran. Okay. And and let's look at Professor Keith Moore. Professor Keith Moore, he's an embryologist. He
Yeah,
talked about this first.
yeah,
He
yeah.
says, first
He
the
doesn't say it
bones
now.
form as cartilage models, and then the muscle flesh develops around them from the somatic mesoderm.
Yeah.
Look
Now,
at
I don't
all
have a
these
problem with that.
references. Okay, then what
I
is
don't
your
have a problem
problem?
with that. What I'm
What
saying
is your
is,
problem?
I'm saying that the tissue does not form bones, and then you just have bones just sitting there. I'm saying the whole thing is in that gel, and that it's all growing within itself. It doesn't have these stages. That's just a
Okay,
fact,
you know what,
right?
Samuel, why don't you do this? Go find a reference because I'm producing references. So I'll ask you,
No,
go
the
find a
references
scientific
are just
references.
describing what's happening all at
Okay,
once.
okay, okay. For whatever you're talking about, which I'm a little bit confused to be very honest, okay, why don't you find a scientific reference for me? And after this debate or whatever, just send it to me by email
Sure, I
and
will.
show me what you're talking
Well,
about. Okay.
okay. Well, I think anyone can
Since
just
you
Google the
came tonight with
stages.
no reference, let's end the topic here and
No, no,
I'll
I'm not
wait
ending
for
it
you
now.
to. Okay.
Anyone can just Google. Anyone can
Okay.
just
Let's Google
Google
it.
the
Let's do it.
stages of
Okay.
development. No,
Stages.
you can Google
Okay.
the pictures of the stages of development,
Okay.
and
Here
you
we
will
go.
see there's never a
Yeah.
stage. We've been going on for this long enough. People can take it away and look at it, right?
Okay.
All
All
right.
right.
Google it.
This will be our
All
last
right.
question, and then
Sure.
we'll move on. If Allah is not morally blameworthy for waiting so long to correct the Bible, then how is God morally blameworthy for working through imperfect cultures and having people learn proper science and wisdom over time?
Well, those scientific errors shouldn't be in a book of God. The book of God shouldn't be causing these problems. There is no excuse for a virginity test to be in that book. And as I showed you from the references now, all these women have suffered throughout the ages because they are subjected to this scientific nonsense. There is no legitimate excuse for those scientific catastrophes to be in your book. And we didn't even talk about meat consumption, about the monkeys and all that. We just ran out of time because we started talking about alleged scientific errors in the Quran. So no. Now the issue of why did God allow this evil to permeate? And well, that's a question for both Muslims and Christians to answer. Look, God will allow evil to happen. That's a fact. Christians have to answer about the evil of Hinduism. Even till today, millions of people are suffering under as low caste Hindus as untouchables. Yet God allowed this evil to take place. It's a question for all of us to answer. And really, the only God has that answer for all of us. But I'm glad that you are seeing the reality of what I am presenting to you today. So in a way, it's kind of a good question.
So the question is, how is God morally responsible? I'm not sure that Nadir actually answered it. Is God morally responsible for just allowing us to develop through science and wisdom? I'd say no. That he's not. He's not blameworthy in any way, because as I've kept saying, the Bible commands us to seek wisdom and learning and to make our decisions on this. And so it's really clear. Like, read the book of Proverbs. It's all about learning, seeking wisdom and understanding, and then making wise decisions in the areas of life in this regard. And so this affects how you eat. It affects a whole range of things. It affects your science. It affects everything. And so that's how God's made us. He's not blameworthy. He wants us to be growing in knowledge, and so that's what we do. Okay.
All right, we'll move into our closing statements now. This is your final reminder to subscribe. If you have visual aids, Nadir, you can get them up, and we'll begin when you're ready with 4 minutes.
Okay, 4 minutes. Thank you. So even if, we went way off topic as an act of desperation to try to somehow salvage this debate on talking about alleged scientific errors in the Quran. I love that topic, but this really wasn't the time and place for it, because even if it was true that the Quran was wrong, let's say on embryology or whatever, that doesn't prove what I'm saying is wrong. Okay, it just shows that the Quran lacks perfection, which of course is not true. I think every argument was clearly defended, but I didn't have time to address all the alleged scientific problems of the Quran, because that just really wasn't the topic. Now, if Sam wants to have another debate on that topic, then yes, I'm open. We can have it. We can just solely focus on the Quran, and you will see the Quran is in complete harmony with modern science. I started out tonight. Can you guys see my screen? By giving a definition of evil. Okay. And that is, let's get back up to the top. Oops, where's my little presentation? Yeah. And that is the definition of evil: a belief causing tragedy, suffering, and misery, which is both needless and preventable in a population of people. Sadly, I've asked Samuel to condemn a virginity test. They are unscientific. The whole scientific community is against it. As we now know from science, there is no legitimate or accurate way to determine a woman's virginity. Yet the Bible contains a virginity test, leading to the needless suffering of millions of women throughout the ages, because there are women who are sexually molested. And why the hell would you subject them to a virginity test? Okay. That was on the verse which you see on your screen, Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 17. The Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam abolished this evil, wicked practice. Okay. It says the most evil and wicked among the people in the eyes of Allah on the day of judgment is that when a man when he goes to his wife and she comes to him, he divulges her secret. The scholars have talked in this following fatwa, Islamic edict, condemning virginity tests. And yet this evil has, of course, even in the Muslim world, you'll see Muslims practice this, unfortunately. But that's not because our religion teaches us to do that. The core, if you are a true believer in Jesus, then you will go to the Mayo Clinic. You will go there and you will talk to the scientists and say, hey, a lot of your patients some could be demon possessed, because the symptoms which those epileptics have actually happen to be the symptoms of demon possession according to our religion. You should do that. Other Christians did. In my debate with Matt Slick, which is from carm.org ministry, the moderator said, yes, I'll do that, because that makes sense. If you are a true believer in this book, then you will do stupid things like that. Okay, you will be a douchebag, because you will start looking at people's disabilities as being the sign of demon possession. When they go like this, you see, he's demon possessed, because the Bible says inside Mark 9:18, those same symptoms when he foams at the mouth, that's demon possession. That's the type of stigma the Bible caused epileptics to live with. Says who? Says the scientific references. I shared all those scientific references where the scientific community, they're just sick and tired of the New Testament causing these problems. It doesn't matter whether they're atheists or not, or whatever their religious belief is. They don't care. They're just sick and tired of this crap which the Bible is causing. And that's why they wrote the papers and research that they did. And finally, we also talked about virginity, the issue of alcohol. And there's no doubt about it that Islam does alleviate people from these horrors of problems of alcohol, from fetal alcohol syndrome. In fact, the research, the the research which I quoted said you got to go to the Christians. That's where you're going to find the problem. Why? Because the Christian response on alcohol does cause fetal alcohol syndrome. That's a research paper which I quoted for you, and they said Muslim women are 50 times less likely to give birth to a FAS child. Don't waste your time with them. You're just not going to be able to conduct your research with them. That's a direct result of the teachings of Islam. So here we see a consistent thread of Islam removing these evils which we find from the New Testament. And I do want to leave you with the final discussion where the atheists and agnostics have weighed in on the evidence. And here's my video. If you could just come and look on the YouTube screen, on your screen, and watch this video. It's only 5 minutes, and then click on in the description where you can read the comments and see how the atheists and agnostics and others than them are all agreeing and saying, yes, Nadir is right on these points. So my time is up. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Nadir. We will allow Samuel, I think you can get 5 minutes here because I think he went over by just a minute. But yeah, we will turn it over to you. If you have slides, you can pull them up.
No, I don't. Okay, well, today the question was, is the Quran a scientific miracle? Is the Quran a scientific miracle? Nadir was attempting to show that that it is a scientific miracle because of the way that it alleviated suffering. And he brought up the virginity test and, the other ones, meat that you eat. Let me see what I've got here. The virginity test, alcohol, epileptics. Now, I've answered those by saying that Christians don't just respond simply with those commands. We're also commanded to have wisdom. And that's part of the picture. I've answered his question time and time again by saying he's not representing the Bible properly. He's just ignoring it and just saying no one's answering him. I'm running away. No, I'm not running away. I'm just giving an answer that you may not like. In terms of the epileptics, I want to stand by what I was saying, that demon possession is real. As a Christian, I do accept that. And on some occasions, that may be the case with someone who appears to be an epileptic. For Nadir just to quote from scientists who are not interested in the demonic, and they're not trying to even answer it from a demon possession point of view. It's not even part of the story for them to say that they're backing up his point. All that means is that he's denying demon possession. He's denying the spiritual realm. He's denying Satan. He's denying Islam in the end. Regarding alcohol, as I said, alcohol, the Bible is clear that we're not to be given to drunkenness. Now, but I want to bring up the point, and this was helpfully brought up for me by someone in the questions, and that is, if the Quran is this miracle by alleviating suffering, what about the child marriages that Islam brings? Because Muhammad married Aisha when she was 6, consummated the marriage when she was 9. That brings suffering. That brings suffering. Or when it talks about wife beating in Surah 4, verse 34, that brings suffering. How is that alleviating pain? How is that a scientific miracle? So even if we use your own standard, we see that it doesn't even work. You're just picking and choosing certain bits that establish your case and ignoring other bits where Islam is causing great suffering in this world. Then just to go over my points, I showed that what the Quran says about the two seas mixing shows that it doesn't understand evaporation, that when it talks about the mountains being pegs that keep the world stable, well, it doesn't, because that's where tectonic plates meet, and it's actually an earthquake area. When it talks about nothing holding birds up in the sky, that this is just wrong science. This is wrong science. And this is the type of science that is normally presented to Christians as being miraculous, that the Quran has all these miracles. And so is the Quran miraculous? No. And I forgot. And then the last quote I gave was from the Wall Street Journal, where we looked at the scientists who give these descriptions about how miraculous the Quran is. And we find out that they're given first-class travel and all these things given to them. And then they're pushed to give an answer that sort of will work. and that those who have come out of this are then warning others not to get involved. And so we've got to be honest on this. We've got to be honest on this. The Quran is not a scientific miracle. I've given plenty of evidence. I've engaged with what Nadir has said. He's avoided certain areas and doesn't want to go to certain areas. And so I think we can very confidently say that the Quran is not a scientific miracle. I'll only need 4 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Green. I'll remind our audience that everyone's channels are linked below. Check them out and subscribe. There's Focus on Islam, and mine focuses on Christianity versus Islam, Christianity versus atheism, and more, along with pro-life apologetics and other topics too. God bless everyone, and thank you so much for watching.
All right, thanks.